Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am recording this on December 12th. I released a video explaining how you should prepare. It's a small video on how to prepare for the winter season. So please watch that video. This video is going to go into detail of H3N2. This is the influenza strand that's floating around. It started in Asia earlier this year, and it's really ramping up in the UK. We do have cases of this in the United States and in Canada, so we're going to go into the details of this. Should you super worry about this, like this is going to be a pandemic? No, don't. It's not going to be a pandemic. But what you need to realize is that cases are, especially hospitalizations, are happening earlier than usual with this version of influenza, H3N2. Now, the inoculation does cover H3N2. Yeah, if it's the trivalent, it also has Victoria in it and H1N1. If you get the quadvalent version, then it's H1N1, H3N2, Victoria, and Yamagata. Now, the problem with the H3N2 is that it's mutated. So what's in the inoculation doesn't really cover what's floating around right now. I will go into the details of what has mutated in the HA protein. Okay, with that, let's just go through a little bit of a timeline of what was going on with H3N2. Now, again, we're dealing with influenza. You will hear it in the news called super flu or subclade K. All right. And the cases are pretty high in the UK. As of December 7th, they had approximately the hospitalizations surged 55% in the week ending December 7th. They're averaging 2,660 daily patients, equivalent to filling 3 hospital trusts. Projections are 5,000 to 8,000 cases by December 14th. So we're talking daily patients here. And H3N2 Subclade K dominates 90% of the samples. This is in the UK. In the United States, the activity is lower relative to the UK, but it's starting to go up. H3N2 Subclade K makes up 86.8% of the subtype viruses since late September. So that's the United States. Over 36 states report surges, not as high as the UK though. With hospitals tightening restrictions, New York declared flu prevalent with 18,000 lab-confirmed cases. Monroe County leads Western New York with 442 cases. Peak expected December through February. Now, again, what is problematic in the UK is that this is happening earlier. So you don't know if the peak is going to be higher than normal or the peak will be earlier and it'll be the same as last year. That's an unknown. The problem is that this did show up in Asia earlier this year. Canada is starting to have cases. Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, British Columbia, 80% of the influenza A cases are H3N2 in week 48 and 3,655 detections, 47% in under the 19s. So I think what they're saying is that 47% are under the age of 19, I think is what they mean by this. ER wait times are up in Canada. In Europe, Spain's incident jumped 2.5-fold in 1 week. Barcelona hospitals report doubling of H3N2 cases weekly, overwhelming wards. Subclade K in half of the H3N2 samples. In Japan, declared epidemic in October, 90% of the samples are H3N2 subclade K. All right, so what we have here is, here's a summary. All right, in the UK, the predominance of the H3N2 subclade K is 90%. And the NHS are returning to masks. Not forcefully in the country, just recommending it. US, the predominance of H3N2 subclade K is 86.8%. And in the United States, they're pushing for vaccines, all right? And they're focused on kids right now. Canada, 80% is predominantly the H3N2. And it's stressing the ER units. Okay, so what do you need to worry about here? Okay, now in terms of what is available for the vaccines, the vaccine for influenza targeted the earlier version of the H3N2 strain, clade J.2. Now the effectiveness with this subclade K, it's only 30 to 40% for adults and 70 to 75% in kids for preventing hospitalizations. Okay, now let's go into some of the details of the timeline. Right, in June of 2025, subclade K was detected in low numbers in Western Pacific region, China, and Japan. WHO noted it as a new drift variant post-vaccine strain selection. So they select the vaccine strain about March, and then they have enough time. It's like February or March, and then they have enough time to build up the supply. So by the time they were building up the selection, this mutation starts. July to August 2025 spreads quietly in the southern hemisphere. Australia, Brazil. Australia reports early cases. Brazil sees 127% rise in severe flu by August. Now, in late September 2025, it becomes dominant in northern hemisphere. Replaces prior H3N2 clades. The UK, US, Canada report first surges. And then October 2025, Japan declares national flu epidemic, 90% H3N2 subclade K. November 2025, explosive growth, UK's hospitalizations up 55% in 1 week, US wastewater signals rising. EU threshold breached early. Okay, so influenza is taking hold not much earlier, but a few weeks earlier than normal. The question is, with this H3N2, will the peak compared to last year's peak be higher? We don't know. But the individuals in the UK are worried. Okay, now let's deal with see the mutations here. Subclade, all right, why is there a mismatch between the H3N2 subclade K and the selected strain that's in the vaccine? Subclade K emerged in June of 2025 post-vaccine selection with mutations allowing partial immune escape. Lab tests show a 4 to 8 fold lower reactivity Subclade K versus the J.2 vaccine strain. Okay. And, all right. Mutations. These are, there's 7 to 9 mutations that are important to understand, and I'm going to go over them. It's in the HA spike of the influenza virus of the H3N2. We're talking about the H part of this. So the first mutation is K2N, and that is a minor structural tweak, contributes to drift. T135K, that's a key escape mutation, alters receptor binding area. S144N adds a carbohydrate shield, common in drifts. N158D enhances immune evasion, seen in parent J.2.4. I160K stabilizes the HA protein structure for better spread. Q143R, surface charge change. So if you're changing the charge, it may improve the virus. AIDS antibody escape. So in this case, it's changing the surface charge and evading antibodies. K189R, critical for antigenic difference in parent J.2.4. T328A mutation stabilizes post-fusion of HA, less antigenic impact. S378N, minor. It's a minor change. It affects stability, but not severity. So those are the mutations that are taking place with Subclade K for H3N2 relative to the selected variant for the vaccine. So what does this mean when we step back? In a post-COVID era, people's immune systems aren't as robust as they should have been. And there are many people that are over-vaccinated. That's furthering changes in their immunogenic constitution. And that this strain, H3N2, it's not going to be a pandemic, but severity is probably going to increase. You're probably going to know people at your work or within your home that contract something that could be uncomfortable, all right? The flu. Most people, they get the cold, but this flu season, you're going to see people that are high fever, maybe stomach issues, aches, won't be able to move around for a while. But in the overall population, it's going to be relatively benign, all right? People aren't going to feel well. They're going to be out sick, but it's not going to be a pandemic or, a shutdown of society. The problem is for individuals that are immune compromised or ones that have comorbidities, heart disease, pulmonary problems, especially after the COVID era. And we're in this aftershock where people have cardiovascular issues, people have immune issues, people have pulmonary issues. Those individuals need to really pay attention. It's important to prepare, all right? Now, how you prepare is up to you. It's based on your own assessment. But I think that when you look at this in a broad view, I think our society is over-vaccinated. I also think that there's not enough care in specializing treatment or specializing prevention for cohorts, and that the medical community has a tendency to cookie cutter it all. And they just think that everybody should get something. And I don't think that's proven. I think it should be only the very high risk categories. Most of the society doesn't fall in that category. So you're just gonna have to weather the storm. Now, I have another video on what you need to do to boost up your immune system to be able to reduce the severity. And when you boost up your immune system, you soak up free radicals, you bring down inflammation on a regular basis, and you can neutralize by taking certain types of things. By doing that, you're reducing your chances of severity. So I've given you a solution. I've given you some updates on what's happening with H3N2. Don't panic. It's not something to panic over. But let me give you another concern of mine. As a war starts to emerge in Asia, you have to keep in mind that biological weapon development is part of foreign policy. The use of biologics is part of foreign policy. China could release something, the United States could release something. And when that happens, you have to create a shield, a bioshield, to prevent your population from getting an overspill or a spillover effect. People won't go in line and get an inoculation during those times. So they're going to have to be tricked into getting inoculated. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening with H3N2. I'm just saying that there is going to be a point in time where that if biological agents are going to be released, that a government is going to have to trick or force the population. So since there's so much that has been sown into the consciousness of the public about vaccinations, negative outlooks on it, that the government is going to have to trick you in some way, in some form. All right? So what let's say that there is a big flu issue. Not saying it's H3N2, but let's say there's a big flu issue that's taking place. And people are convinced by the mainstream media to get inoculated. How do you know for sure that you're getting inoculated for H3N2? How do you know? Maybe it's for something totally different. Maybe it's H7N9. Maybe it's for something totally different, like a pox. How do you know? How does the caregiver that's giving you the inoculation know? To say that our medical industry isn't controlled by the government, you're not paying attention. And if we're moving towards biological warfare, something will have to happen. Now, there's technologies out there where you don't even need to do an inoculation. You can put it in the food supply. You can put it in insect vectors and just inoculate the population that way, especially in the summer with mosquitoes. There's lots of ways to do it. So just keep in mind that biological weapons is part of foreign policy in China and in the United States. Don't be stupid. The sad thing is that there are many doctors, many physicians that don't appreciate this. They don't appreciate this very fact. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is don't over-vaccinate because it weakens the immune system. Right? The medical establishment thinks in a silo, and they're only thinking one inoculation in a very isolated context. They're not looking at everything in a holistic way. And this pertains also to the aftershock of of COVID-19. There's an aftershock. There's an increased number of people getting dementia. There's an increased number of people that are getting immune disorders. There's an increased number of people that are getting cancers. There's an increased number of people that are having sympathetic problems with their nervous system. There are increased number of people that are having heart disease, overclotting, more inflammation, leading to leaks of the vascular system, myocarditis. Lots of things are happening. So in that context, on top of this scheduling of just vaccine the population, does the physician really know what they're doing? Probably not. They're just doing what they're told by the CDC or the FDA. So just step back and like go, what was it like in the 80s, right? Or the 70s? And maybe we should go back to a simpler time and stop thinking that we know so much about the immune system, because we really don't. We know very little about psychiatric medicine, but we pretend we do. And we know little about the immune system and its complexity. So we need to be a little bit humble, step back and go, let's just wait this out. So for most people, for H3N2, just weather the storm. Just push through and weather the storm. If you have some sort of comorbidity issue and high risk, then you have to recalculate that and weigh your risk factors. You have to keep in mind, if you're an adult, the current version that's out there is only 30 or 40% effective. So that's my take on this. Please make sure that you watch the video on how to prepare for the winter season. All right, that's the best I can do to explain to you. Don't panic, but this is why I've been saying for almost on every episode I do, boost up your immune system. This is the reason why. What's happening right now is the reason why I told you to do this. I've been saying this for 5 years. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Please make sure you go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get prepared.